hours for EDH. Hey ho, it's time to sail with Mastering Commander.
Ahoy there, and welcome to Mastering Commander. Today we'll be staying below decks, where we focus on a budget build for a commander, optimized for fun and interesting gameplay. Today we'll be talking about Tahngarth, First Mate. Tahngarth is a powerhouse of a commander who wants to dive into the red zone as often as possible, and wants your opponents to do the same. On your best games, Tahngarth will be leaping from turn to turn all over the battlefield, dealing extra damage to your opponents. His weakness, though, is when combat becomes more difficult, either due to board wipes or someone making it difficult to attack. Let's look a little closer at what makes this Minotaur go. Tahngarth is an affordable commander at only 4 mana, which means you can rely on getting him out multiple times each game if you need to. His ability means that he can't be blocked by multiple creatures at the same time. So since he starts as a 5/5, your opponents will need a single creature to effectively block him somehow, whether that creature is larger than him or has an ability like Death Touch. Once Tahngarth is tapped, usually from attacking, he's also able to join in when someone else attacks an opponent. It's your choice when to engage, but ideally, Tahngarth is going to be going into the red zone as often as he can, whether or not it's your turn. He thrives in a deck that's trying to maximize the combat step, both for you and your opponents. But he doesn't work well with some abilities that you might expect to be a benefit. Keeping him untapped means that he can't attack on your opponent's turns, so we don't want to give him vigilance. In addition, you lose control of Tahngarth for the duration of his attacks on your opponent's turns, so something like Lifelink would actually help your opponents and not you. It's far better to give him abilities like Trample, Double Strike, or other bonuses like Menace that make him difficult or impossible to block. Let's look a little bit closer at how the deck works. The first thing that we're going to want to do with Tahngarth is to make him a better attacker. Usually there will be someone at a 4-player game who's open to being attacked. There are a few different ways to do this. The first is to make him a bigger creature. The deck includes multiple equipment that will pump his power and toughness to make him more difficult to block on the battlefield. Ring of Valkus will upgrade him every upkeep that it's attached, and also allows him to have haste for only 1 mana. Obsidian Battle Axe is similar, automatically equipping since Tahngarth is not only a Minotaur, he's also a warrior. Tenza Godo's Maul may have been made for someone else, but for Tahngarth, it's +3/+3 in Trample, which is everything he's looking for. On the other side, we have Fires of Yavimaya, an enchantment that allows him to have haste along with any of your other creatures, but also warns your opponents that if you need to, you can make him a little bit bigger so that he survives that combat step. You also have 2 lands in the list, Kessig Wolfrun and Skarg the Rage Pits, both of which will give him Trample and make him a little bit bigger to try to do some extra damage on the turn that you need it. You also have a surprise trick in Psychotic Fury, which will give him Double Strike at instant speed while also drawing you a card. This allows you to get the jump on someone who thought that they had Tahngarth handled, when in fact, no one has Tahngarth handled. The best one that we have, though, for pumping him up is Runes of the Dais. Since he is both a red and a green creature, he'll be getting Trample, Double Strike, and +2/+2, putting him at that ideal 7 power spot, which means only 3 attacks will be enough commander damage to knock someone out of the game. Another thing that we want to do for Tahngarth is make him more resilient, either to removal or to pesky blockers that get in the way. Mirror Shield gives him a little more toughness, but most importantly means that Death Touchers are no longer a free pass to killing your Tahngarth. Slippery Bogbonder will also give him hexproof, and could even boost him a little bit if there are some counters laying around on your other creatures. One of my favorites, though, is Gaia's Embrace, which will give him not only a significant power boost, but also allows you to regenerate him when he's on your side of the battlefield, or when he's running around on the opponent's. The next step in making our deck run is forcing your opponents to attack each other. The best way to do this is with Goad, that literally does what I just said. Agitator Ant offers to make your opponent's creatures more powerful, in exchange for them going into the red zone on their next turn. Goblin Racketeer goads whenever he manages to attack someone, and Geode Rager provides you with a Goad landfall trigger. Sometimes, though, there's a creature that you really want to get out of the way, and for that, we have a few options that target a specific creature for multiple turns. Bloodthirsty Blade is an underrated card that allows you to equip it to an opponent's creature permanently goading it until you decide to move it somewhere else. We also have Shiny and Predatory Impetus, which will keep a creature attacking and give it a little bit of a boost. Normally we'll put this on an opponent's creature in order to keep it busy, but if need be, these can always go on Tahngarth since, let's be honest, he was planning to attack every turn anyway. We have a few more effects that force a creature to attack, but they are allowed to attack you if you're an appealing target. Boiling Blood is a quick instant that will do it once, and Rage Nimbus, Heckling Imps, and Bullwhip are all repeatable instances of forcing a single creature to attack. These are best used on utility creatures your opponents never wanted to send into the red zone, so it's fun watching them agonize over who they want to send it at. Feel free to remind them too that if they want to do a little extra damage, all they have to do is attack one of your opponents, and an angry Minotaur might be willing to come along for the ride. We have a few other effects that cause all creatures to attack every turn. These lead to more chaotic games, but let's be honest, those are the most fun anyway. Aggravate and Incite War are both one-shot effects that will force a player to swing with his entire board. But we have a few more persistent effects as well. Fumiko the Low-Blooded is a great blocker that forces all of your opponents to attack all the time, while Goblin Diplomats is a more targeted option that will choose one opponent to force everyone to attack with. In addition to this, we have Warmonger Hellkite, who will cause everyone to attack every turn for as long as it sits in play, and even has an ability to help you swing the tide of the battle towards the attacker's favor. One of my favorite options, though, is Invasion Plans. While Invasion Plans doesn't force anyone to attack, it does force everyone that can to block. On top of that, it makes the attacking player choose which creatures are blocking where. This is a cheap way to get some of your creatures through while the others get blocked by everything the opponent has, or it encourages your opponents to make attacks. Now that you've got everyone attacking, let's make sure that they'd rather attack someone who isn't you. Goad already deals with that problem, literally allowing them to only attack your opponents. But having a few good blockers can go a long way towards encouraging your opponents to maybe head another direction. Skullwinder and Acidic Slime both provide some utility when they enter the battlefield, but after that, they're just small death touchers that say, hey, if you attack me, your best creature is going to die. Arasta of the Endless Web would more aptly be named Arasta of the Endless Blockers, because the number of small spiders that she's ready to put in the way of opponents' attackers is extremely high. Hornet Nest pays you off if someone really does attack you with something large, creating tons of 1/1 death touch insect creatures. Keeping with our Minotaur theme, we also have a Labyrinth of Scophos, which will get them lost if they dare to send an attacker the wrong direction. In a pinch, this can also keep Tahngarth alive if someone surprises you with a blocker big enough to take him out. This all sounds great, but not every game will have everything going the way that you plan, and you need a way to come back into those games that just seem to go wrong. Even if your big attacker gets wiped off of the board, usually you'll have equipment that's sticking around that you can use to suit up your next threat. We also have a number of ways to draw a few cards between Hunter's Insight, Hunter's Prowess, and Return of the Wild Speaker. Each of those is able to draw you cards based on how big your attacker is, or can provide a little bit of extra utility in a pinch. We also have a few board wipes like Savage Twister and Storm's Wrath. Both of these are just small enough usually that Tahngarth is going to survive, but all of the little critters that were planning on blocking him are going to be gone. As far as supporting cards, this deck is mana hungry. You're trying to play large creatures and then get them into the red zone over and over again. You have a number of ways to get extra mana early on so that you can play your larger spells as soon as possible. And in addition to that, you're running plenty of other creatures who aren't afraid of the red zone in their own right. Even if Tahngarth isn't able to stick around, you should have something big enough to threaten your opponents and make them consider whether or not they can risk messing with you. The base cost of the deck comes in around $32, which is very reasonable for the amount of impact we're going to have on the games we're involved in. However, if you really like what Tahngarth's up to, here are a few upgrades that could allow him to have a bit more presence at the board. We'll start under $5 with Brash Taunter. This card does everything that you want. It encourages players not to attack you since it's an indestructible blocker that'll only hit them, and it can force other creatures to attack once you have some extra mana laying around. If you're having trouble finishing out games, Overwhelming Stampede is a cheap addition that will pump up all of your creatures based on whoever's the biggest creature on the board. Even if that's just Tahngarth, That's an extra 5 power and toughness, in addition to providing trample. Jeska Thrice Reborn is a perfect way to pump up your Tahngarth, allowing him to deal triple damage if someone lets him through. We're talking about one-shot territory at that point, and people probably won't want to let her stay around on the board for long. On the other hand, we have Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs. If someone dares to attack you, they better have 3 extra mana for those attackers, or you're going to get a free ogre as a blocker or an attacker in future turns. Now that we've gotten through the $5 cards, let's look at what we can afford if we go up towards $10 as our budget. Rishkar's Expertise allows for another massive card draw option, again working off of the power of our creatures. The thing it does better, though, is allowing you to immediately play a 5-drop from your hand, even if it's one of the new cards that you drew. Embercleave gives Tahngarth double strike, trample, extra stats, and all of that at instant speed. There's literally nothing else we'd rather be doing in this deck. Finally, we have Hammer of Nazan, which will synergize with all of the equipment we've already put into the deck, and give Tahngarth indestructible so that he can keep going on and on. Looking at cards that cost over $10, Goblin Spymaster is another take on forcing other players to attack, but it's also a blocker, and let's be honest, giving them 1/1 goblins that are forcing them into combat is kind of hilarious. Crawl Space works perfectly with all of your forced attack cards, meaning that only 2 creatures can ever come at you at one time. This means that if your opponents are forced to attack with everything, they're going to have to find another target for all of the other creatures that are getting in there. Finally, Disrupt Decorum is the perfect card for this deck. For 1 round, every creature must attack, and every creature must attack someone who is not you. Tahngarth will have his pick of the litter for combat steps that round. That does it for our look at Tahngarth First Mate. Were there any cards that surprised you, or anything that you're surprised you didn't see? Leave a comment below and let me know. I'd be glad to see what ideas you have to make this Minotaur really rumble. Stick around until the end of the video for some nautical-themed advice on how to play this deck. But otherwise, feel free to like the video, or subscribe so that you can see the new decks that are coming out each week. Next time, we're going to be looking at a commander that really wants to draw cards, discard cards, and do it all over again. Thank you, and I wish you fair winds and following seas.
What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? Throw him in the red zone. Do you give him Vigilance? No. Do you give him Lifelink? No. What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? Throw him in the red zone. Hold him back as a blocker? No. Send him to Davy Jones' locker? No. What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? Throw him in the red zone. What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? What do you do with a Tahngarth First Mate? Throw him in the red zone.